Weencast, a Ween podcast with Shane and Rory.
Hey, what's up? This is Shane.
And this is Rory.
And this is Weencast. And we welcome you to the Weencast Happy New Year 2020 podcast recap holiday special.
Yeah, everybody, welcome. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight. This is the Weencast Happy New Year 2020 podcast recap holiday special, y'all.
Nice. So we just wanted to do something kind of different and kind of fun, and I guess say goodbye to this crazy year of 2020 by kind of going over some of our highlights and lowlights from this year of doing our podcast. And it's actually, with all the crazy shit that's been going on in 2020, we've just been having a ball making this podcast and had a lot of really great moments, if I could say that, Rory.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it turns out that a pandemic, offers people doing radio and podcasts from their home additional opportunities. I feel like we really rocked it out and really took advantage of having a little bit extra time and sort of being stuck at home and trying to use our time. Like I was just thinking back to this last year and, part of when we were kind of coming up with the idea of having this recap holiday special and just thinking about like, damn, dude, we were really productive this last year. Like we really put out a lot of fucking episodes. I gotta say, we really hit off some really amazing interviews this last year that I thought were just awesome episodes and an awesome podcast, but also an awesome experience, and then also some great shows from our history, going through, 2000 and getting into 2001, and that being such an amazing time period. For Ween, that was awesome. We did the White Pepper 20th anniversary episode, and that was awesome. So we had a lot of variety, dude, and really rocked it out, I thought. So
yeah, man. I mean, like just going back and just the fact that it happened to coincide with exactly 20 years ago of the shows that we were kind of getting back to discussing anyway, and then also the fact that White Pepper came out in 2000, so that was 20 years. Those things just kind of fell into place.
Yeah, dude.
Us making there
was totally
podcast.
Like this kind of anniversary vibe going on. You're right. There was a lot of like, the 20th anniversary of all these different shows.
Yeah.
So
that just happened to work out,
Yeah, cool confluence of events.
We just thought it might be fun to kind of go back through the shows that we made through the year of 2020. Just talk about them, either the show that we discussed, the concert that we discussed, or the podcast itself that we talked about, or the interviews, and just maybe play like a clip or two from each one and just kind of talk about, that specific show, that specific concert, or that specific podcast. So that's what we're going to do tonight.
Yeah, just run down some highlights, drop some behind the scenes bullshit, what have you. Lay it down for you.
Yeah, man. So the first episode that we did for 2020 was actually our 20th episode. So fuck that. That just happened to wind up happening 2020, and it was episode 20. Electric Factory show, the second show with the Electric Factory on May 27th, 2000, Philadelphia.
Yeah, that was a good show. That was really notable. I remember that being notable for me not having a lot of great memories of that show, because that was the first show that I was over 21, and it was like a bar at the show. The Electric Factory, has a regular bar.
Right.
So I remember spending a lot more time kind of focusing on that than paying close attention to the show. But nevertheless, that was an awesome show. Some of the highlights for songs: Little Birdie, Hell Yes, Ohio. They opened with Ohio, the cover from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they did Sorry Charlie, which is always great. Awesome Sound was an awesome rarity from that show. And this is back when Homo Rainbow was getting a little more play. That was awesome. And then Birthday Boy was also at that show, which was cool.
Totally. I mean, those Electric Factory shows were amazing.
And, it's also notable because I think this was the next show that we had seen after the 420 show at Rutgers.
Right.
And that was also a high point. I mean, we both kind of consider that to be, one of like the best like show we've ever been to. And so
yeah, that set the bar very high.
Yeah, and that was like an outdoor show, outdoor venue, like festival type scenario, and so such a different contrast, like coming to this. They only ever played 2 times at the Electric Factory, and so this is one of those shows, part of the like they're kind of like a Philadelphia area band, right, coming from New Hope, so they have a lot of history in Philly, and so this is the Electric Factory era, the second of 2 shows, and like you said, they were within like 9 months of each other or something.
Right.
So.
Yeah, man. Played there twice, and we saw both of them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Totally. You want to play a little highlight from the episode there?
Yeah, man. Let's play a clip.
Clip it, boy. Yeah, so the next episode from 2020, we took ourselves out to Pittsburgh for the Metropole, July 21st, 2000.
Yeah, and so this is kind of like the start of like summer tour, and then they would be going to Europe shortly after this.
Yes.
And this was just a few days before they played on Letterman, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, that's right, dude. In hindsight, because we've covered the shows coming up, that we're going to be talking about like a little bit later with Trade Winds and then Norva, this is one of the last like U.S. shows that Glenn is a part of for a little while, because Glenn takes a little hiatus.
That's true.
So
I
was thinking about that when we were doing like the Trade Winds show. But one thing for me, dude, that I sort of remember from this one, and when I say it, you'll remember it from when we were talking about there in the episode. But this freaking dude, call him like a hippie ne'er-do-well. Like supposedly, he was like meeting up with me like during the show, and he was the boyfriend of like a coworker of mine or something. And he was like, "Oh yeah, dude, we got this camper. You can come after the show. Come back to the camper and we'll hang out." And he like had a place for us to meet, and he like totally never freaking met up with me. I like went there after the show and like waited like a goon, and like he didn't show. So I'm telling you guys, if anyone knows about that guy, this is at the Metropole. Anyone knows about the hippie ne'er-do-well who may have had like an after hours party at like a camper or some kind of like set up hippie van near the venue, let them know that we can just tie up the loose ends, and move on with our lives.
I mean, I'm thinking that he's still coming back. I mean, have a little faith. It's only been 20 years. I mean, we can
I could
We can
probably
wait a
do
few
better
more.
to find his name.
The two things that I'll never forget about that show was the fact that I had Will called our tickets, like over the phone, and when we showed up, they gave us ticket stubs for Richard Jenny. They didn't actually say Ween on them. They said Richard Jenny, the comedian. It was just like, what? Like, that was the first, like, punch to the gut. And then, even though Ween was great and the actual music was great and everything, the show got cut short because they were having dance night.
Yeah.
And we had to get out, and the dance and the disco people came in. And I mean, just being a young punk kid at the time, I just remember being outraged and just like, they cut Ween short, like, what?
Yeah.
Just
Is this the show that Craig drove to?
Yeah. My brother Craig was along and drove his car, I think.
His Saab. So he must have driven like 90 miles an hour then too.
Yeah. Well, he usually would, especially. Yeah. Well, he still does, but at least he definitely back then. Yeah.
Allegedly.
But another fun time.
Yeah,
memories.
dude. Well, some of the highlights, the Enabler, Drifter in the Dark, and Up on the Hill is really rare, and that was so that was at that show, and then also the cover of Band on the Run.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely.
That was a cool cover.
And this is another one of those shows where I file it in the category of like kind of re-listening to it and going down memory lane. Like, I remembered things. Things came to me that I never really remembered. Like Band on the Run.
Right.
I had like forgotten that they even played that. Like, that's so cool.
I know. Same here. And that was one that didn't really get played like every night of a tour, like some of the other like covers for like various time periods.
Yeah.
Clippy.
All right, guys. Here's a little clip. Check out this clip.
Up on a hill, down by the river, by the ocean, across the field, by the world I'm moving. I said, Lordy, Lordy, Lord, I'm coming home. When I was younger, my mama told me, she said, Gina, I want to smell it. And it was smelly, and it was smelly. And she said, Lordy, Lordy, Lord, I'm coming home. Down the road, back down the road.
All right, man. You want to intro the next one?
Yeah, so basically the next one that we wound up doing after that was our first full-length Patreon episode.
Yeah.
If you're not a patron for us on Patreon, hit us up at patreon.com/Weencast podcast. So this will be the first one that we presented as a full-length episode. So we kind of jumped ahead time-wise here, and we discussed the June 30th, 2001 show, which was the Jimmy Wilson group at John and Peter's in New Hope.
Yeah, a little Ween side project.
Which was just me. Rory wasn't able to make it to that one, but our friend Corey and I had jammed that shit out. So Rory indulged me and let me kind of ramble on for this episode.
Yeah.
And talk about going to see the Jimmy Wilson group. It was all the members of Ween plus Chris Hartford, Andrew Weiss, Bill Fowler. I think that was everybody that played that night. So it's almost like everyone in like the whole like Ween family. So just a lot of great, like, it wasn't a whole lot of Ween tunes. It was a lot of like cool covers and just like jam outs because you got so many guitar players. It just kind of felt like them just going around and like everybody picking a song that they want to play, you know, and just like a lot of fun. John and Peter's, if anyone out there is listening to this has never been, it's very small and it was very crowded. So it was just a old school, sweaty, jam-packed kind of night.
Yeah,
but,
dude. And
I mean,
it's awesome to showcase a John and Peter's, an episode that was at John and Peter's, because that's really like an important. John and Peter's is an important part of Ween, like, history and lore.
Sure.
And it's a really cool little freaking hole in the wall bar. And the Jimmy Wilson group, I mean, dude, like what you just described and who was there and part of it. I mean, this Jimmy Wilson group and at John and Peter's, that just makes it like a really rare little slice of Ween history, you know, like, so that's why I really liked about that episode. And I wasn't there, so I'm just like eternally jealous. One other thing worth kind of throwing in there that makes this kind of important. We kind of made that decision for Patreon. You know, we mentioned this is the Jimmy Wilson Group show. It's not a standard Ween show. So we kind of made this delineation. It's like we wanted if it was a standard Ween show, we wanted to make sure that was always a regular podcast. But this being like a side project, you know, like it ended up creating this special situation. So it's sort of like this one's memorable for me because all the pieces kind of came together, you know, and I think it presented itself quite well and was an awesome, a nice episode.
Yeah. So here's a little clip of that.
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right, so then our next two episodes for the year were our complete Earfloss interview episodes, so part 1 and part 2. We want to give a shout out to Kenny with Earfloss. The actual episode was recorded at the end of 2019. The actual conversation that we had with him was the end of 2019. And he put together a really cool podcast where he basically had sort of asked us to go through like the entire Ween like history and just kind of do like a Ween interview like in general with us. And we had just a ton of fun, and we kind of decided, like, you know what? Let's just put our entire conversation out there as part 1 and part 2.
You know, I'm just really thrilled that Kenny asked us to be a part of that episode of his show. You know, that was the cool thing about that for me, was that we were asked to be interviewed, you know? So it was like, I was
a lot of fun.
And honored that he would consider us for that. So, you know, I was really, you know, that's why it was cool. I thought it was really cool that, you know, we were able to present the full interview, because we chatted with him for a really long freaking time. But,
it was a lot of fun.
He had to put together
too.
like a beautifully curated, like, you know, like produced, you know, sort of puzzle of an episode, which is fantastic in its own right. But
Yeah.
but it is pretty cool to be able to see the whole thing, because man, we were just fucking shooting the shit about Ween for almost 2 hours there on the phone, which is pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. So yeah, dude, no, that was great. That was a lot of fun, and so another shout out to Kenny, of course. Now the next one was also a lot of fun. You know, and you already mentioned that this year is the 20th anniversary of White Pepper, and of course White Pepper loomed pretty large to us back in the day as like an important part of our Ween history, and so we rocked out the White Pepper 20th anniversary episode, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I mean, it kind of went from one thing and kind of morphed into like another, and then kind of another and another. And I basically just kind of wound up, looking at it as kind of like a White Pepper, like audio documentary kind of, everything that we could think of and then some. And anything I could find that I could pull from, like when they were on Letterman, I brought that up. I used a couple of sound bites from that. And, we found that really cool little video on YouTube that was made for promotion for White Pepper of them, walking around New Hope. And, just like anything I could get a hold of and just sort of like threw it all in there.
Yeah, dude, if I'm not mistaken.
It wound up being a lot of fun.
If I can give you some props. If I'm not mistaken, don't we have footage or audio footage that you got that isn't even on YouTube?
Yes, that's true.
Dude,
there are
check
a couple
it out,
of
man. That's episode 24. Check it out. White Pepper 20th anniversary. There are
There was
clips
a
on
couple
there
of-
that you can't even find on YouTube, people. Yeah, and we were skirting copyright by I think we were able to use just a little snippet of clips for every song from shows that we actually went to.
I don't know if they were all shows that we went to, but we
Most
definitely
of them
used some live audio. Yeah, live audio from every song.
Yeah.
On White Pepper.
Yeah, most of them were shows that we actually attended, I thought. Anyway, we tried. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, it was great, and I appreciate it because we did a good amount of research. I remember pouring through some old album reviews, listening to Diener being interviewed. It's you put together a lot of information, and you hope you put it together in a way that is useful to someone and also fun to listen to. So I thought we rocked it out. All right, now here's a clip of the White Pepper 20th anniversary episode. Enjoy.
And so maybe I'm kooky crazy, Shane. Maybe I'm a kooky crazy guy. But I think I just think it's tight. I just think there's just like not really much to throw away, and it's just like a lot of good songs. And if I'm being honest, which I am, right? Then there's a few songs on here that are some of my fucking favorite songs of Ween. Like,
yeah,
they're definitely there. And yet there aren't any really on here that are like at the way bottom. I've mentioned Stroker Ace, okay, so maybe that one is, but none of the other ones are near the bottom. And I would say if I was like looking at God, Ween, Satan or The Pod, there's probably a whole bunch of songs on there that, sorry to say, if I was ranking Ween songs from 1 to 300 or however many there are, a lot of the earlier ones probably would be near the bottom because they're like weird songs with sounds and things and whatever, it's like, and that's cool and that's a part of Ween and that's awesome, but this is a part of Ween too.
Well, the next one that we put out, it was actually another Patreon episode, the Gopper taping chat. And, what's interesting about this one, Shane, is, this is basically like a whole episode of an interview that I conducted to prepare for the Fred Moore interview that was coming up, just right after this. So it's just another little, sort of a behind the scenes look at the kind of work that goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I think I might have suggested it to you. Like, maybe you should call Gopper. Gopper's a good old friend of Rory's and mine as well, but mainly a friend of Rory's. And he used to be a big taper for the Disco Biscuits for like years and years, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Yeah, like toward the end of the 90s, early 2000s, right around. We talk a lot about that time period, the technology shift. And he was, he's an old DAT. He's an old DAT recorder, and he's semi-legendary in the Disco Biscuits era. He's got a few hundred, definitely several hundred shows under his belt that he's recorded. So yeah, dude. Because Fred Moore, as people might remember, as did a lot of, August Foreman, a lot of taper, a big time taper, massive big time taper in like the Ween world and beyond the Ween world. But like truly one of the great tapers probably in like, if you had like a Rolling Stone magazine, top 500 greatest tapers of all time, August Foreman may be on that list. Like seriously.
Yeah, man.
So anyway, so to do justice to him, because we have so much respect for him, to do justice for him, I wanted to go to my resource, the GOP, who, though he hasn't taped the possibly like 10,000 plus shows that August Foreman has, the GOP is a pretty accomplished taper in his own right.
Yeah, man. I mean, and you guys just had, a really cool conversation and just listening to it was really informative and fun too, because, GOP basically just says like, okay, this is the kind of stuff I used and, like gear wise and stuff like that. I think both of us realized that I didn't know anything about taping really at all. So it's like, what are you going to ask a taper if you don't know anything,
Yeah, totally.
So,
it's like a little how-to, I'm with you, dude.
Yeah.
I didn't know that much about the nuts and bolts of it. And I feel like Gopper really helped me get a better sense of how it all worked. So that was awesome. So thank you, dude. Shout out to Gop. And we can play a little bit of that for everyone. Now, this is from Patreon. So if you want to hear the rest of this kind of behind the scenes shit, check out Patreon. But here's a little bit for you to check out now.
Let's do it.
Do it now. Do it. There's nothing to it.
How do you make, like keep people off your shit or like establish your space or like, how do fans tend to treat you?
Fans that were in the know would be respectful and sometimes help me by making sure people didn't put beers down on the table. Like the table that if you set up a table with your stuff on it, a lot of people put their stuff on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, you've got to make sure no one steps on it. The toughest taping experience I ever had was in a Bucknell fraternity where we had no table to set up. We had to put it on the floor. Luckily, I had another taper with me, and we pretty much had to put one arm against the wall, the other arm on the tape on the mic stand, each of us on either side, or it would have been trampled by prostitutes trying to get to where they wanted to go in the party.
Yeah, totally.
Packed full basement, Bucknell fraternity house.
Okay, so the next two episodes were our Fred Moore interview. So basically, Fred was so gracious with his time, and we had kind of set it up for, a week or two ahead of time, going back and forth with him about, what we'd like to talk about. I mean, like I said, I didn't really know a whole lot about taping. I just knew that he was one of the guys that I like kept running into and kept seeing, and he just kept coming up and coming up and coming up. And now here it is all these years later, and you kind of get to like, sift through the pieces a little bit with like social media and everything of like, who were those people? You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And we got to be, pretty friendly, over the years of just running into each other at shows and stuff. Not like I would say that I was like a good friend of his or anything, but we certainly met and talked, us and his awesome girlfriend Corrine, Rin the Red, between Ween shows and Urchin shows and stuff at John and Peter's that I was lucky enough to make it to. And he was just so nice to us and kind of indulged us on like, hey, tell us everything, run down like your entire concert life. And he pretty much did, just like how he was a big, Grateful Dead taper and went to see, something like 200 Dead shows and then, was a big like Fish guy and started, taping Fish and got into Ween and just a great, story. And again, we had such a long conversation with him. We had to make it 2 episodes.
Yeah, dude.
And
he kept talking. He kept talking.
He just kept talking, and we loved every minute of it. And he's also an accomplished musician in his own right, and does great music with him and Bill Fowler, and occasionally Mickey. And, he sent us a bunch of tracks and was like, here, like use some of these tracks and stuff. And, Rory, you kind of mixed those down and edited those episodes together and just sent us like some really great shit, of him and Bill and Mickey and great stuff. So just so much fun.
And so
I really hope I was thinking to myself, going through this year, and if Fred's listening to this, when this pandemic is over, I really, really, really want to make it to something that those guys do and just say hello and thank you in person. And, I'm looking forward to seeing him again in person.
Yeah, I'll buy him a delicious Coca-Cola. I didn't even know what I was really getting into. And just learning so much from him about like everything, like kind of behind the scenes. And like you mentioned, like, he's played with Diener from time to time. He gave us tracks of that, like from his own private taper stash, which you can check out on Patreon. We put that shit up on Patreon, exclusive content, because it's coming straight out of Fred's vault, And
yeah, man.
Anyway, so that was just awesome. And that was, like you said, there was so much that we couldn't make it one episode, so we had to break it apart. But yeah, dude, I mean, in fact, I'm probably going to go back and I'll listen to that again over the holidays just to kind of remember all the cool shit that I learned from him,
Yeah, man. Well, should we play a little clip from one of the two?
Yeah, let's just play a little bit. Let's mix it up. Maybe it's part 1, maybe it's part 2, maybe it doesn't matter. Just enjoy.
Can you just say, I can't believe I was there to tape this show, or this by far is the best show I've ever taped?
Yeah, that's a tough one because there's a lot of those. But some that come to mind, one of the ones that comes to mind that I was really glad that I was at, that a lot of people didn't get to go to, was when Ween did the DAT tape thing. When Claude got hurt in 2002, when Claude got into that really bad car accident, they did a couple benefit shows. They did a couple in New York, and then they did one at a small bar in Hoboken, and it was Ween duet with the DAT tapes opened, then Instant Death, then Sound of Urchin. That was a hell of a night. And it was at the Hoboken bar.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Was that like the official like concert for Claude?
That was the first one. It was like the official, unofficial one, because it was in a small bar. Like the place was held maybe, I don't know, 300 or 400 people. And then they did another one at Irving Plaza.
So yeah, guys. So the next one is another show from our history, more accurately, Shane, from your history, because I did not go to this show.
The beginning of 2001 at the Trade Winds. I think it was March 23rd of 2001 at the Trade Winds in Seabright, New Jersey, which was kind of one of those shows that I just barely made it to. I was just barely able to arrange tickets because it was a very small venue at a little beach town. The beginning of the 2001 tour, which was a short little tour between the end of March and like the beginning of April, and that was it. Very few dates. I think they had kind of played like a ton of shows in the year 2000, and when you look at 2001, there's really not that much when you compare it with the year before, so you could tell that they must have been kind of like, okay, let's calm it down a little, take a little bit of a breather for 2001. Mm-hmm. That was a raging show and a great night. The only thing was, for that particular tour, no Glenn. So this was a no keyboard show.
Yeah, no Glenn.
No Glenn, no keys.
As I recall, you were driving around Seabright, New Jersey in the dark, and you had to meet up with a guy named Jimmy at his hotel room.
Yes. So we met a man named Jimmy for the tickets. Dude named Jimmy was really cool and hooked us up with tickets, and we did not get murdered. No Sopranos were harmed in the making of that podcast. It was one of the it was one of those kind of nights, when you just barely arranged. A dude was like, yeah, I got 2 extras, and it's like, okay. And that was back in an era of not a whole lot of cell phones, and we ran the risk, and it all wound up working out for us that night.
Dude, and as far as the music, that was I wasn't at that show, but that was a rip-roaring, like, punk rock fest. As we mentioned, this is part of the Enter Sandman era.
Yeah.
And I think the No Glenn equals the Enter Sandman era. But also, you get the Papa Zit, you got Albino Sunburn Girl, which I think is played a little more often now than it was back in the day. But it's still a super rare song. But that was like an intense show, dude. And like, as I recall, Fred Moore was there headbanging like a mofo right in front of you.
That was the first time I ever actually saw Fred.
Yeah.
I don't know that I had a conversation with him, but I know that was the first time I saw him.
Well, that was the irony, or not irony, but that was the interesting thing when we were interviewing him, that actually came up, that, the next show that we're doing is a show that, that was the first time you had ran into him. So he kind of gave us a little bit of like, not much, but I think he reached out to us about it. It was like, oh yeah, dude, fucking Trade Winds was great.
Yeah.
So
that just
cool.
sort of all fell into place for that like era too.
Yeah.
So should we play a little clip?
Yeah, let's play a little clip and let people hear it for themselves. Everybody, well, that was fun. Well, the next episode, man, this was a lot of fun, and this was actually a regular episode and a Patreon episode, a two-parter that was split between a regular episode, regular podcast, and Patreon. But yeah, dude, you want to end the suspense, dude? So
this was the Claude Coleman interview.
Yes.
So I kind of laid this one on Rory because it kind of fell into my lap. We don't really plan to do a whole lot of interviews. We had sort of planned the interview with Fred and kind of knew what we were getting into. The Claude interview just kind of happened a little bit sort of like organically. And I won't go into the whole details about like how we were able to hook up with Claude, but I will say right up until like the moment we had him on the phone and he was in the beginning of like the conversation with us, we didn't know if it was actually going to happen or not.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's Claude. Claude is awesome, but he's also a very busy man, because he's drummer of Ween, but also so much more than that. Right. Yeah, dude. And you never really believe, and obviously, okay, we have this podcast, but first and foremost, dude, we're just big Ween fans. So to have the opportunity come up to have what ended up being like almost a 2-hour conversation with Claude, like that was just fucking awesome, dude.
Yeah, man.
And
he was so busy at the time getting the sound space, a lot of the different things for sound space like arranged, and this was a little bit earlier on in the pandemic, so it was kind of like, okay, are we going to be able to open this year like we wanted? And things were sort of like up in the air, like, and getting pushed back. I know a lot of us were kind of like, on just a timetable that's just is going to get pushed back for 2 months or 3 months or whatever, and that was no exception. So it was kind of like, all right, well, we should have been open by now, but then this pandemic kind of happened and things got pushed back and blah, 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 blah. So he was just, crazy busy with that. And he was so generous with his time that night, and just so nice and chatty and friendly, and, got into a lot of deep subjects, not only about Soundspace, but about like the history of the Asheville area and just like really, interesting stuff and deep stuff. And we were just blown away. I was just honored and humbled.
Well, yeah,
really.
dude. I would say, and this is another one where we really tried to, do a lot of research, so we were prepared. And I have to say that Claude really is a very intelligent guy, and it was great to speak to him about some deep shit. Like, we really got into like the history of Asheville and touching on racial injustice, but also like his own history and with music, especially with him playing with Fishbone. Oh my God. I mean, it was really awesome. Like, it was great. How can you not put, interviewing, chatting with Claude Coleman as like, one of the highlights of the year for the podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Like, really cool. And, what a gentleman.
He was another guy. He just kind of kept talking. And we're like, yeah, man, like, tell us whatever.
Yeah, dude. No, he had a lot to say about Asheville and Soundspace at Rabbits, his business venture. It's amazing studio space for musicians for rent by the hour for locals and people traveling through. And it's in a historic, Black-owned business. So it was really cool to really learn about all that shit, which you can check out in our podcast. But dude, it was great because we actually got to go down through memory lane with him and talk about how he came to become a member of Ween. Like, Claude was dishing like the deets, and that was awesome. And then also about some of his own history with bands that he's played with and some of those influences on him through the years, which was really cool because like you said, we don't really plan a lot of interviews, and this one definitely just kind of fell into our lap. And we always said, if it falls into our lap, we're not going to say no, and like, let's roll and let's go for it. And
right.
And we just kind of ended up with like one interview after another.
Well, should we play a little clip? And again, maybe we'll just do a little something at random from one of the two. So there's the regular episode is episode 28 is part 1. And then our third Patreon episode is part 2 of the Claude interview. In part 2, he goes into a little bit more of like sort of the Ween history and some of his own music and the Amandla albums and some of that just really fun stuff.
But, we've done all these different interviews, but the one thing, what we've always tried to do is, all these things have something to do with Ween, right? Like, we're a Ween podcast, so if we're interviewing someone, it has to have something to do with Ween. But even with that being said, we always try to make the interview be about that person. And so, there was just so much to learn about Claude musically that's not Ween, And so as much as we talked about some Ween things and like, really got to chat about that. Like, I was just really excited that there's so much more to the man, and like, it was great to like, to get to honor that and to showcase some of that by talking about it.
Yeah, well put. And I mean, I definitely learned a lot about Claude and, the history of him with Ween. But yeah, like some of the stuff that like I just never knew about, and just a really great night and, fun conversation, really.
Totes. So yeah, man, let's roll the tape.
Can we ask you a little bit about playing with Angelo more? I'm also a huge Fishbone guy.
It is really awesome to play for and with Angelo. And so he brought me into the studio to do a bunch of tracking for them, and then we started doing gigs. They put out a record, and I did some playing with them for the last couple of years. And then on the last run, they were using this guy named Hassan, who's a badass from Oakland, church shops maniac from Oakland, and since they were using him, I was like, yo, why don't we just keep Hassan? I would just love to rip on bass, because I've been playing bass as long as I've been playing drums, pretty much, and pretty capable, I think. And so I was like, I can crush this stuff, And he was like, okay. And then like Angelo was kind of like iffy about it, just because he's like a bit tough, But like, yeah, what we did, we had a show, Nevada, some desert thing. We went after Devo this past year. Anyway, we did this festival in Ween, and next day I flew at 6 a.m. out there, and we rehearsed. I just crushed all the songs. And I was like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, man, that shit is awesome. So I started playing bass with him, and it's been a total joy, man. Angelo is like a treasure of the earth. He's one of the most underrated music artists. I mean, like, it would be impossible to really kind of like understand like the extent and the breadth of that dude's talent, but he's like just, I mean, on every level, he's just insane. I mean, and literally insane too, but just in an amazing way. I mean, like, he doesn't stop, and he can just jump across every single instrument, kind of like I can, and just like lay it down and show you the shit. He can have a song in a minute and a half. He can just stream like poetry just for like 20 minutes, like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and he riffs on sax, he riffs on organ, he riffs on drums. The singing is just absolutely astounding, man. You know, the songs that these guys have been writing are kind of, to me, feel like the new millennium fly zone or something, man. They're really potent and fucking cool and funky, but they're like deep and they have great meaning, and they're just awesome. And it's an amazing project to be a part of. I really hope something more happens with it. I think actually they're trying to do another run, and I got asked to do bass on that, but everything is such a crapshoot right now, so I don't know what's going to happen with that. I love it, man.
All right, and so the next thing that we presented out there was our episode 29, which was the Michael Maronna interview, or the Michael C. Maronna interview, better known to all of us as Big Pete from the Nickelodeon show Pete and Pete. And again, this is something that it just kind of happened. It just sort of happened kind of organically. I did ask him, but I wasn't really expecting a yes. And, he was like, yeah, sure, I'd love to. I'm like, dude, like, that's amazing, and I just knew that he was a big Ween fan. And obviously I had a ton of questions about Pete and Pete. And, he was also in the Home Alone movies, which, are on a lot right now because it's Christmas.
Yeah, dude.
And, it's like one, talking to someone from your youth, like, an old friend or something. And another great guy who was just so gracious with his time, was on the phone with us for, I think it was over 2 hours, if I'm remembering correctly.
Dude, it was another one that was just like, so awesome to have someone be so generous, to speak so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really had to sort of like pare down my my things that I wanted to ask him about Pete and Pete, because I could just go on and on all night. I had to tell him what my all-time favorite moment was, and so I succeeded in doing that. But he just had a lot of great stories, and as a matter of fact, since we were talking to him about how he got into Ween, the first Ween show that he saw was the night before our first Ween show.
Yeah, dude. On the Golden Country Greats tour.
On the country tour. Yeah, man. 1996. Is that insane or what?
Yeah, dude. It's, the pandemic just brought kismet, and fortune favors the bold. But dude, yeah, I mean, what a, like a childhood hero, like just watching him on Big Pete, or Pete and Pete, watching him as Big Pete on Pete and Pete, like just so amazing. And like you said, Home Alone, man, I must have seen like Home Alone, 2.5 times by now, at least, on cable the last few weeks. It's like, and if people out there aren't familiar, Michael Maronna plays Kevin McAllister's older brother. He has the line that's the famous line, Kevin, you're such a disease, which, that steals the show, it's just like awesome. And so, dude, it was just a lot of fun to talk to him about like his experiences with Ween, but also other work that he's done, But it was cool, like a little slice of my childhood like came out. Chatting up with Michael Maronna was awesome. And so why don't we play a little bit of that conversation?
And you know what? And there isn't a full-length episode of the Mike conversation on Patreon, but there is sort of like excerpts and things that we didn't have time to put into the main episode.
Oh, yes.
So you'll hear, if you sign up for the Patreon, you'll hear, I think it's probably about 4 or 5 different stories that Mike told us that we just didn't quite have time for in the regular episode.
Yeah, dude. Like he talks about some of his, top memories, kind of about who he worked with Home Alone, and his experience with being having to go through casting with John Hughes, which is pretty awesome. Like not worthy moment,
Well, let's play a little snippet of that.
Yeah, let's snip it.
So did you actually get to work with and meet John Hughes?
Yeah, I think all the main characters had to audition for him. I read for both my part and for Devin Rattray's part. I was going to say earlier, Catherine O'Hara really a treat to work with, but also of my generation, Devin Rattray are really, really funny and quick minds. John Hughes was just like a kind of a reclusive character who's more like stays in Chicago. So this sounds extremely creepy and gross, but he would come to New York and get a hotel room, and you would audition the callbacks would be in the hotel room. This would be, entirely on the up and up. I'm sure I came in there with a guardian and all that, but you just, if the person was from LA, if they weren't in New York, it wasn't always at a casting agency for the callbacks.
Gotcha.
Right.
But this was a person who just was pretty much behind the scenes, maybe came to set once or twice. And Chris Columbus was pretty much running the show as far as directing, but I also was 11, having turned 12 in 89, so 12 in early 1990, and didn't really observe what all is going on. So was happy to be along for the ride, though.
Okay, and so the next episode after that was our Weencast podcast Summer Spectacular Fan Story Contest results episode.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We put that out at the very end of summer.
So we had been sort of like collecting these stories from everybody like throughout the whole summer. That was just so much fun to hear those. Listening to the stories like for the first time as they were sent in to us was just a blast.
Yeah,
hearing
dude. No,
what
so many
people
great
had sent
stories,
us.
so many fun stories.
Yeah, and just hearing what people sent us for the first time was just so great. We'll have to do it again. I think maybe if we do something in 2021, maybe we'll have to make like a specific like topic. Like send us your story regarding this. You know what I mean? And so that might give people a little bit more like direction as far as like, oh, okay, I can remember that, or because I got a lot of people that were like, well, what should I talk about? And it's like anything you want. You know what I mean? So just getting those stories and just hearing what they were was just so great.
No, it was fantastic. Because I remember when I came up with the idea and like shared it with you, and you were immediately like interested, and you were like, this could be cool. But we both were like, it was kind of like one of the things I said to sell it to you was kind of like, well, even if we only get like one or two, then hey, we don't even have to do it if we don't get enough. It was like, hey, if we only get like one, then we just won't even fucking do it.
We wound up getting more than enough, and and some of them were short, some of them were long, some of them were too long, but it was great. It was, they wound up being a lot of them wound up being the perfect length and sounding great. That was another thing, is like, well, are they going to sound good? Everybody's sounded, good, if not great. They were all good quality. So they just all worked out perfect.
And so, yeah, let's play. Why don't we go ahead and play, maybe the winner. Maybe Fortune Favors the Bold.
Yeah, a little snippet of Helen.
Yeah, the Ween Lebowski. Because that was the winner. And so here you go. Check it out, everybody.
The hilarity ensues once I realize all my friends have dispersed. The usual bullshitting and chit-chatting, which turns into like an hour of standing around after a show. I gotta piss like a racehorse, like the Stallion, parts 1 through 5. It's something horrible. And as a female, it's harder. I'm just gonna be honest. You just can't whip it out. And I'm not gonna Jersey Turnpike it. I'm pretty classy, or I try to be. Anyway, so I find my car, and I'm about to get in and try to drive around and find a gas station or someplace I can go use the bathroom. And I realize that's not going to happen. There's nothing within miles. The only chance I have is maybe to walk around the building and beg to get back into the venue. And at this point, I'm not even high or drunk really anymore. I'm just consumed by finding a bathroom. So I rush around the corner, and I see Mickey and another guy standing having a cigarette outside of this place, and it's dead. There's nobody. There's like quiet all around, and he's always super nice anyway, but I must have looked urgent because I waited for the other guy to finish talking and then complimented him on the show and et cetera, and he offered to take a pic with me, which I loved, and I just said, I'm very sorry to have to do this to you, but can you please make a security guard let me in? I just need to pee. I'm going to die.
Cool. So that kind of gets us down. We're getting down to the end of the year. And so the next one was another kind of hearkening back to our history at the Norva in Norfolk.
Another, the 2001, April 6th, 2001. So this was another one that both of us had, I want to say went to, but, had attempted to go to. We tried to jam this whole thing out from Pennsylvania to Virginia and back in the same night, and it just didn't work.
We bit off more than we could chew.
We wound up getting stuck in some really bad traffic and not making it down for the beginning of the show, and catching maybe like half of it.
Yeah, dude, we're still not exactly sure when we got there, but like how far into the show. But yeah, dude, no, the memories, we both kind of talked about how we didn't really have a lot of memories of the actual show. And for this one, for me, I feel like the memories cloud my judgment. The attempt to travel down there and back, like the transportation and the transit was so arduous and kind of clouded, in a negative way, the whole experience. Because listening to the show again, I realized that it was a pretty darn good show. And my memories were always that it was like the worst show I had been to. Now, some of that is because we missed the beginning, so it's like, darn, it's not a whole show. But this is also another one from the same tour as Trade Winds, and no Glenn. Yet again, no Glenn.
The shows from that particular time period, without Glenn, they were just rip-roaring, rocking shows with the other four guys, and just like down to the rock, and they were really great shows. And, my memory is the same. My memory is basically like, the Norva show kind of sucked, But when you go back and you listen to the bootleg, it's like, no, it was a good show. We just weren't there for enough of it.
Yeah. The highlights are like it's like an old school rip-roaring adventure. First off, it's Enter Sandman era, so that's always going to be a highlight for me. But then you got Stallion Part 5, which also is at Trade Winds. You got Licking the Palm of Guava and the Mushroom Festival in Hell. So that's just awesome to have that live. So there are some really great highlights from this show for sure.
Yeah, man, totally.
Yeah.
Great show.
So check that one out. Check out Norva. And maybe we can have you check some out now with a clip. What do you say, Shane?
Yes, please.
Drink Stallion.
Okay. And so the last thing that we presented for the year 2020 was our 4th Patreon episode, which was just a few weeks ago, right at around the same time as the Norva episode came out, which was basically our conversation on Ween on vinyl. So Rory kind of indulged me for an hour or two, and I just kind of gushed about how much I love vinyl records and my memories of collecting over the years, the Ween collection I've put together, and my knowledge on just kind of like the Ween original releases versus the re-releases or the repressings, and just kind of threw out everything that I knew. And and it was a lot of fun. It really was.
Yeah, dude. No, I have a lot of respect for your vinyl collection, and so the Ween vinyl, is awesome. So, and that's what the Patreon's for, I feel like, is to give the fans a little something special, a little something different.
Yeah, man.
So, so right there, you lay it down for Patreon. It's a way to say thank you to people who are pitching in, and it's, a lot of people get into vinyl, so I definitely think it could be something worth checking out.
And there's a cool little story in there that, I didn't really think it was really relevant to any of our other episodes, but it was the first time that Rory and I had went to New Hope, and I bought a couple of the first Ween records in my collection that I still have to this day. So that story is in that episode as well.
Oh, yeah. No, that was great.
Should we hear a little clip of that?
Yeah, let's lay it out for you.
And
Was he the same one who waxed philosophical?
Well, yeah.
Or is that the other store?
No. He was the guy who basically was like, he's like, well, hell, he's like, I'm in the picture in the liner notes in Pure Guava. And we're like, what? And then he's like, yeah, he's like, I was in that photo. And
dude, no, I remember him being like, just like, oh, and now Ween has just become so big, but what about the old record store guy that was there all along?
All right, and so that kind of takes us up to now. So
yeah, dude, that's 2020 in a nutshell.
2020 has just been a crazy year, I think, for all of us. I think all of us have been affected in some way or another that we weren't expecting. Let's put it that way at least. But, again, I have to say that it's been a fun year to try to make something like this. You have to sort of like make lemonade out of lemons sometimes. And that's one of the things that I think we've done this year with, our show. And it's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, dude, it's been a lot of fun. And I certainly, hope that people out there enjoy it, and that we're sharing the fun. 'Tis the season, ho ho ho, and all that jazz. So I hope people enjoy it, and we can spread some Ween related cheer into the world. But yeah, this last year was a lot of fun, dude. I mean, it was awesome being able to rock out a lot of content and to feel proud about it, and to see people enjoying it. And so it was a cool year.
Yeah, man.
I was just going to say, I guess we can, kind of get some rounds of thank yous before we get off the air here.
Yeah. First and foremost, I mean, I have to say, Claude, thank you so much, Claude. That, again, we're humbled and honored to have an actual member of Ween on our little show. We want to say thank you to Michael C. Maronna. We want to say thank you to Fred Moore, August Forming.
A.K.A. August. Thank you, Fred.
The Reverend B'ill, because he gave us a couple of shout-outs this year, helped us out on a couple of things. And we have our interview with him, which was a couple of years ago. But go back and check that out if you haven't heard that. Kenny from Earfloss. Brian, who does all of our artwork. The guy is just an amazing, great, absolutely great digital artist, and has always been so nice to us. And pretty much anytime I would bother him and say, like, hey, could you make this, or could you make that? He always comes back and sends something so cool and so great. Just thank you so much.
Yeah, dude.
Brian.
No, we don't say thank you enough, Brian. Thank you.
And we're just going to do kind of like in no particular order, everybody that helped make the show great. Between the patrons and our contest participants, Mike, Miles, Daniel, Spencer, Dan, Corrine, Cody, Michelle, Rich, Ben, Andre, Matter, Laura, Helen, Shawn, Rick, Sonya, Eli, Jim,
Well, don't
Matt.
don't forget, Bugnish Bockwinkel on YouTube, Brown Bass. Those guys are awesome. Am I forgetting any other? And probably am.
Thank you so much to Colleen, who now handles Bognish Monster YouTube channel. Those are the people who have just given us so much content and so much easy to find shows and interviews and cool B-sides of songs and, just the amazing, Ween content on YouTube. It's just incredible.
Yeah, dude. So that's awesome. It's great.
All right, everybody. So that is the Weencast Happy New Year 2020 podcast recap holiday special. Thank you so much for a great year. We love you. Thank you. For anyone out there who's listened to any episodes this year, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody. It's been awesome. Hope to get out some awesome episodes in the new year. Hope you guys listen, and thank you so much for listening. And have a great rest of your holiday, and have a happy new year, and be safe.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Peace.